Across South Asia, a generational shift is turning into a series of political collapses. Driven by high unemployment and systematic corruption, Gen Z-led movements are challenging the subcontinent's established orders. Sri Lanka provided the first major template. When the economy failed, the youth took to the streets, demanding accountability for a stolen future, and eventually forcing the ruling government to abandon power. Bangladesh followed shortly after. Massive student-led mobilizations targeted a decades-old political establishment, leading to the abrupt resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the dissolution of her administration. These movements successfully dismantled old regimes, but they struggled to replace them. In both cases, the resulting power vacuums were filled by the military or interim technocrats, leaving the core political systems largely in the hands of the traditional elite. Nepal's history suggested it would follow the same path. The country had cycled through 14 governments in just 17 years, leaving young citizens with stagnant prospects, while career politicians remained in control. However, in the 2026 general elections, the movement shifted from the streets to the ballot box. The young Rastriya Swatantra Party, or RSP, outperformed the traditional legacy parties to secure a decisive majority in the House of Representatives. This victory placed Balendra Shah, a 35-year-old structural engineer, at the head of the government. After building a national profile as the mayor of Kathmandu, Shah successfully transitioned his anti-corruption platform into executive power. The resulting cabinet reflects this shift toward technical expertise. Key roles are now held by professionals like Dr. Swarmam Wagli, an economist with a background at the World Bank, signaling a move away from patronage toward specialized governance. Nepal's youth managed to convert protest energy into a stable, expert-led majority. Yet in India, where young voters face nearly identical economic frustrations, the political landscape remains dominated by the old guard. India actually pioneered a similar blueprint for youth-led reform over a decade ago. The Anna Andolan movement was a massive grassroots effort to break the cycle of institutional corruption. At its height, the movement captured the nation's attention. Millions of young Indians joined the protests, creating a level of political pressure that seemed capable of restructuring the country's governance. Today, however, that revolutionary energy has largely been absorbed. The traditional parties remain in place, and the radical restructuring that many hoped for never materialized on a national scale. This points to the system's maturity trap. While Nepal's political state was fragile enough to be remolded by a new party, India's political machinery has become too complex and entrenched for a single-issue grassroots movement to easily displace. Part of this trap is how voters interact with the system. In Nepal, the youth could abandon traditional parties entirely, but in India, the political ecosystem is heavily anchored by local business interests. This diagram shows the relationship between capital and political power. Local businesses fund dominant parties not necessarily out of ideology, but to ensure a predictable operational environment. They invest in the existing system to protect their own stability. This creates a structural firewall. New, youth-led groups struggle to attract the massive capital needed to compete with established parties, leaving them financially isolated. In a mature system, the shared interest between business and the political establishment creates a level of inertia that consistently neutralizes external pressure from the youth. Nepal's Gen Z movement also benefited from a unified message. By focusing exclusively on corruption and unemployment, they avoided internal divisions that often fracture large electorates. In contrast, the Indian electorate is deeply fragmented by caste, region, and religion. These internal lines make it difficult to unite the youth behind a single secular issue, as other identity-based concerns often take priority at the ballot box. Beyond identity, there is the simple factor of survival. For millions of young Indians, the daily competition for government jobs and exam results is a full-time struggle. The sheer energy required to navigate this survival economy is a barrier in itself. Most of the generation is too busy competing for a living to sustain the years of organized effort required to seize political control. India's Gen Z is structurally divided and economically exhausted. The opening that existed in Nepal is effectively closed here by the sheer weight of India's social and economic competition. These factors explain why the Nepal experiment remains so difficult to replicate across the border. India's political system has reached a level of maturity that resists the kind of sudden, single-issue takeover seen in Kathmandu. The dense network of business interests and religious demographics acts as a massive anchor. This anchor provides a specific type of paradox. It makes the state nearly impossible to collapse, but also nearly impossible to reform. This illustrates the trade-off. Fragile nations can crack under pressure, while India's mature bedrock remains stable, preventing a power vacuum. However, that same bedrock resists change. The structures protecting against collapse also block new movements from uprooting established corruption. Nepal shows us that a unified youth can rebuild a fragile system from the ground up. But India is a reminder that in a mature system, taking to the streets is only the beginning of a much longer, more difficult struggle against the weight of the system itself.